Hello everybody, it's Tanya and welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be a 24-hour reading vlog, but a little bit different 24-hour reading vlog. It's going to be 12 plus 12. So I will read 12 hours for 12 hours today, and I will read for 12 hours tomorrow, and in between that I'm going to happily sleep because I don't want to read at night. I want to read during the day. I want to, understand what I'm reading. I don't want to sleep during I read, I just want, to enjoy the process. So that's why I decided just 12 plus 12. 12 hours today, 12 hours tomorrow, and it's going to be great. As for the books that I have for you today, I have these two very short, because I think I will only be able to read two books, so I have these two books for you today. The first one is As I Crossed a Bridge of Dreams by an unknown author. We don't know the author's name. It's written as the recollections of a woman in 11th century Japan. An agreed name of the woman is Lady Sarashina. Sarashina is a region where her father used to be a governor, and a lot of women of the time are known by their father's either names or their father's positions. So that's why they call her Lady Sarashina, because her dad was a governor of that province. And this is a very personal diary. It's just her diary, just like the diary of Lady Murasaki, which I read last year and really enjoyed. If you want to see my vlog of me reading this book, I will link it up here, maybe here, somewhere here, and also in the description below. I absolutely enjoyed this very short, very slim little book because it just gives such a personal look into life of people of the time, mostly of course like upper class people, so aristocracy, the court of the time, but I really enjoyed seeing all the traditions. This is another book in similar vein, also a diary. From what I understand, she also used to be a lady in waiting to an empress, to a different empress. So yeah, I am looking forward to reading this one, as well as the second book that I have for tomorrow, The Waiting Years by Fumiko Enji. I have had this book for a very long time, and I decided that finally it's the time to read it. From what I know about this, is something about Japan in the 19th century, late 19th century. And so a woman is wife of a government official. She is sent to Tokyo with a heartbreaking task. She is to find an official concubine for her husband. So this, women's stories, so stories of two women and their lives, and it's going to be wonderful. I am anticipating this. So yeah, let's start reading. I will start with As I Crossed the Bridge of Dreams, because first of all it's shorter, and it also has illustrations. It has a lot of beautiful illustrations, and I'm looking forward to reading this book. So let's start, and I will update you when I have something to update you with. Hello everybody, so I'm filming this on the next day after the readathon. I started editing the video, and I realized that maybe it would be a good idea to provide some additional information on the Heian period, which I myself know nothing about. So I researched just a little bit about the period. I checked this book I have. It's a very short kind of introduction to history of Japan, as well as some information on the internet. So let me tell you about the Heian period, what I found very shortly. Primarily information concerning literature. So in Japanese history, the Heian period is the period between 794 and 1185. The name of the period actually comes from the name of the capital of the country of that time, because in 1794 the capital was moved from Nara to Heian-kyo, which is an old name of Kyoto, and so the historical period is also named Heian period. This was a time of relative peace and stability, which allowed the aristocracy of the time to pursue art and literature. They had a lot of leisure on their hands, they had a lot of free time, they were able to pursue their artistic exploits. It was the aristocracy class that was leading the cultural development of the time. During that period, Japan was emerging after a long period intense absorption of Chinese culture. But in China of that time, I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly, Tang Dynasty or Tian Dynasty? I am so sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. Let's say Tang Dynasty. Tang Dynasty was in the terminal decline, and Japan in 1894 stopped sending official diplomatic embassies to China, because first of all it wasn't safe anymore, because China had uprisings, there was change of the dynasties, so China wasn't a very safe and stable place, and no people wanted to go there. And in the Heian period, going to China was more of a punishment rather than a respectable job. They did send a few embassies at that time, but it was significantly less than what it used to be. So by 973, Japan turned in on itself, and the development of the true Japanese culture began. However, of course, the influence of the Chinese culture was still felt in many aspects of life of that time. It was especially felt in literature and language, because the Chinese didn't have their written system until they came to contact with China. Thus, the idea of literature is the concept borrowed from the Chinese culture, as well as they used Chinese hieroglyphics for writing. They used them for representing Japanese sounds, as well as they used them for the meaning, for the language itself. During the 10th century, when the truly Japanese culture was developing, the most important accomplishment of the time was the creation, the emergence of the Japanese writing system, the kana. These were letters of hiragana and katakana that represented the sounds of the Japanese language, and they started being used in just everyday writing, everyday life writing, because Chinese was continued to be used in business communication, in political communication, all this official matters. That was Chinese, because the vocabulary was more precise, vocabulary was more developed, so they just sticked with the Chinese. But in everyday communication, in just normal life, people started using hiragana and katakana. And thanks to the appearance of this Japanese writing system, a lot of Japanese poetry and prose was developed in the Heian period by men and women together. Women played a big part in developing the written Japanese language. A lot of works of literature come from women, actually, so that is exciting. In some sources I found some, even in introductions to Diary of Lady Murasaki and As I Crossed the Bridge of Dreams, in most of these introductions the authors say that men would write in Chinese and women would write in Japanese. However, in this book, the author of this book, he says that men in just everyday life, they also used Japanese writing to write poetry, to write letters. They used hiragana and katakana for that, but for official communication, Chinese was used. So probably it's not so much separation between genders, but so separation between the activities. So because men were mostly in politics and in business, so they would write in Chinese, and because women, they mostly just lived their everyday life, they had a lot of leisure, they wrote just about their life. They wrote their diaries. So that's why they used hiragana and katakana for that. As for the types of literature that was created, I will read you from the textbook, because apparently a lot of things were created. So he writes that Japanese language literature of the late 9th to early 12th centuries covers a wide range. The main categories are verse, travel diaries, mixed verse and prose sketches or episodes, private journals of court and domestic life, tales and novels, and somewhat imaginative accounts of historical personages. Printing techniques were known but were not used outside Buddhist circles, so all these books were handwritten and circulated in a few manuscripts. As a result, what is thought of today as Heian literature is only the small surviving portion of the period's total literary output. Prose works in particular have disappeared, which is such a pity. Such a pity, because I've read both of these diaries and I really enjoyed both of them. To me personally, what I liked most about both of these diaries is just a look into a normal life of, well, not so normal life, because you know those were upper classes, but still just everyday life of an upper class person, what they thought about, what they saw, what they talked about to other people, how they communicated, what problems they faced. Just, it was so interesting just to look at the people of that time. That's what I enjoyed about these books the most, just to look at people of the time. So I'm so sad that many of these works have disappeared. So also a big part in development of literature of that time played daughters of the Fujiwara, right? Yeah, Fujiwara family. Fujiwara family was the most influential family of the time. They acquired the influence by marrying off their daughters to kings and princes of the time. So that's why they, through their like family connections, they became the most influential family of the period. And so these women who were, you know, empresses of the time, they started cultivating, you know, education, refinement, and they needed people with these talents around them. So as their ladies in waiting, they would always look for these gifted women who are famous and respected, especially for their writing ability. So that's how Lady Murasaki became a lady in waiting. She was famous for her writing, as well as Sei Shanagon, who also was famous for her writing. Just, it's like a Medici, you know, like Medici in Italy were facilitating artists. I feel like the Fujiwara women were also facilitating artists. That's just like my parallel, Medici and Fujiwara. And so because these talented women enjoyed a certain degree of social and intellectual freedom, they were able to produce works of literature that are considered masterpieces even today. It's my very short kind of additional historical sketch of the period of the time. If I made mistakes somewhere, please forgive me. I am no historian. I just found this information in my books and on the internet, so correct me if I said something wrong in the comments. But I thought it was so interesting with the Fujiwara women and with the Chinese and Japanese language, how they were interconnected with each other, how the Japanese language developed. I thought it was such an interesting information. So yeah, I hope it was interesting to you too. So now off to the regular program. I've read the introduction to this novel, which actually gives you a lot of interesting information. I loved the introduction from Lady Murasaki's diary because it also gave you a lot of interesting insight into the culture of the time, and this introduction actually gives you a lot of interesting information on the authoress herself, her family. So I will share a little bit with you about her family. Maybe talking about her life that was written here might be spoilers for some of you. I don't mind them, but I know that some people don't like, you know, spoilers. So I will not talk about her life, but her family. She comes from a middle-class family, you know, upper middle class. So it's not like middle class, it's like a little bit lower than the highest ranks of the court. So it's not exactly like the middle class in our understanding of the word, but nevertheless the middle class of that time. And it's from these people that usually the governors of provinces were chosen. And this job of a province governor wasn't very respected by higher levels, by higher ranks, and also it wasn't very welcomed by the people themselves, because, well, they would have to go to a different province, which means they would have to leave the capital city, the Heian Period, and that place was considered, apparently was considered to be like the place of all good things. And if you are sent to a different province, it means that it's almost like a banishment banishment from the capital city. So they didn't really like this type of job a lot, but it was quite lucrative. They could earn quite a bit of money. They just had to do it, they had to go. And majority of the provinces obviously were very far away, and it was just hard to get there because, you know, they didn't have any particular transportation means. So yeah, it was hard. And Lady Sarashina's father, he comes from a long line of distinguished literary men. So his ancestor in the 9th century was Michizane, the famous scholar statesman, whose political defeat by the ruling Fujiwara family ensured that he would forever be counted among Japan's heroes, but barred his descendants from power. So that's her father. And her mom actually comes from the Fujiwara family, but like from a minor branch of the family. And the fun fact is that her mom had a sister who also wrote a diary, and I found this diary on the internet. It's so in Japanese it's called Kagero Niki, and it's translated as the Gossamer years. I will put the picture here. So her aunt also was a writer, and again, the author of the introduction suggests that apparently Lady Murasaki read that diary, and that diary influenced the tale of Genji that Lady Murasaki wrote later. So we have a whole lineage. We have a whole lineage of writers in the family of Lady Sarashina, which is exciting. Yeah, and then he goes into her life. She was born in 1008, so it was a little bit later after Sei Shinagon wrote her pillow book, and at that time Lady Murasaki was still working on her tale of Genji. So that's when she was born, so practically the height of the Heian period, right? So it's like 11th century, so 10,000, the very height of the Heian period. So yeah, that's the introduction is really insightful and interesting. Later on he goes into the how the text was discovered, how the text was rewritten and kind of translated by different people. So yeah, introduction in this book is really interesting, and if you decide to read it, definitely read the introduction. It is so interesting. It is so interesting and very insightful. So yeah, now I will continue. I will start reading the diary itself, and I am so looking forward to this. I realized that it's written in very short kind of vignettes, so just a few pages. That's something I want to talk to you about. But first, I mean this. So this is, you can see you can see some of the illustrations. Yeah. So what I wanted to read you is this very first entry to her diary, because I think it is so dreamy. So in this first entry she writes, "I was brought up in a part of the country so remote that it lies beyond the end of the Great East Road. What an uncouth creature I must have been in those days. Yet even shut away in the provinces, I somehow came to hear that the world contained things known as tales. And from that moment my greatest desire was to read them for myself, to idle away the time. My sister, my stepmother, and others in the household would tell me stories from the tales, including episodes about Genji, the Shining Prince. But since they had to depend on their memories, they couldn't possibly tell me all I wanted to know, and their stories only made me more curious than ever. In my impatience, I got a statue of the healing Buddha, built in my own size, and stealing into the altar room, would prostrate myself and pray fervently. Oh, please arrange things so that we may soon go to the capital, where there are so many tales, and please let me read them all. If it's not a diary of an ultimate reader, I don't know what diary would be. And also, yeah, I was really excited to see Genji. It makes me want to read Genji. It makes me want to read the tale of Genji, because look how excited she is. So yeah, that's the first entry. In Suruga stands Mount Fuji, which I used to see in the west from the province where I grew up. There is no mount like it in the world. It has a most unusual shape and seems to have been painted deep blue. Its thick cover of unmelting snow gives the impression that the mountain is wearing a white jacket over a dress of deep violet. At the summit is a level place from which smoke emerges, and in the evening we actually saw a fire burning there. You see, so apparently, and also there is this illustration with the Mount Fuji and the fire. So apparently in the 11th century the volcano was active. You see? So you read these diaries and you learn things. Now we know that Mount Fuji, the volcano, was active in the 11th century. Because now there is no smoke. At least I don't see it. So yes, she also mentioned Mount Fuji, because how could she not? So, I am at page 45. And what I've noticed is then she writes a lot of poetry. Because you've come across quite a few poems during, I checked like further. I checked a little bit further. There will be a lot of like very short kind of poems. And why I want to kind of talk about this is because it's really interesting. So this is, she sends a poem to a person, kind of like a letter, and then this other person answers her also with a poem. Like, it's kind of their type of communication. That's how they communicate. And I remember that in the introduction to this book, the author actually writes, so he says that no urban dweller of Heian Period was likely to get through the day without writing and receiving at least a few poems. And even if he escaped to some mountain temple, he was expected to send his friends letters with at least one poem apiece, in which the cry of the deer and the booming of the temple bell were almost bound to figure. And to return in due course with several new poems in his notebook. So, like, obviously, like, I knew that like poetry is a big thing in Japan, like in, you know, in Japanese literature. I didn't really like realize that they kind of communicated through poems. They kind of send letters to each other in form of poems. In this particular case, for example, her stepmother divorced her father, but they had very good relationship with her stepmother, and so her stepmother promised her to return when the cherry trees would be blooming again, and so the time has come and the stepmother hasn't returned, and so she writes to her, "You promised to return. How long must I still wait till you fulfill that vow? Spring did not forget the tree whose branches once were white with frost." And then she replied affectionately and sent the poem, "Do not give up your waiting. One unawaited and who made no vow will soon, I hear, visit the plum tree's trailing branch." So you see how interesting, they communicate through poems. I wonder, do Japanese people still write poems to each other? Probably not, right? Like, if you are Japanese, let me know. But I think probably that's probably an old tradition, which is sad because I think it's interesting. Well, obviously not everyone is, you know, a gifted poet, but still, it's just such an interesting form of communication. Yeah, interesting. Would you write a poem to your friend? Oh, how fun. You see, that's why I like these diaries, because you find a lot of just interesting, fun, surprising things in them that you wouldn't normally expect. Yeah, I just really like this poem communication. So everybody, it's a bit later. I did some grocery shopping and had some lunch. And so, continuing with this book, currently I'm on page 63. So I'm a little bit progressing, but it's actually a very short book. It's like the diary itself is like 100, maybe 10 pages, and the rest of the book are introduction and the notes. The notes take up a lot of space in the book. Let me show you. So this is all the notes. So yeah, what I wanted to say is that this diary was written kind of from the memory, like it was said in the introduction, that she wrote it actually at the end of her life. She might have had kind of like notes throughout her life where she would write down the poems that she wrote and that she received. Maybe she wrote down some episodes in her life, and later on, relying on those notes, she probably has written this diary. So the diary is written from the memory, and it kind of shows because she skips big chunks of her life. So we start off when she's about 13, maybe 12 years old. Now she's already like a grown-up woman in her 30s, and you know, it's just 100 pages. So yeah, she skips like big parts of her life. She doesn't go much into detail about like her home life, doesn't go much into detail about her relationship with her parents, for example, and even with her time in court, because she decided to go and become a lady in waiting in her 30s. So she kind of just writes vignettes, like a short kind of episodes. For example, she travels somewhere and she describes the episode. Or for example, her dad is appointed for a new job and how the whole household reacts because he now has to leave again and go very far into a very far province. So yeah, this diary just like written in short vignettes and short episodes. Yeah, not bad, like nothing special, just how it is. It's not like it's a flowing, continuous story, you know. It's more like episodes, episodic kind of writing. But you know, still really interesting. See the life of people of the time. Okay, everybody. So it's already the evening. Finished reading the As I Crossed the Bridge of Dreams. I enjoyed it just as much as the Diary of Lady Murasaki. It's different from the Diary of Lady Murasaki. This diary is very quiet, and also in my personal feeling it's even more personal than the Diary of Lady Murasaki, because she talks about her feelings about death, because a few people die here, and she describes how she felt after their death. She also talks about her love and attachment to her father. Not so much like love, but just she describes her relationship with her dad, and I felt like it was so close and also personal. So I don't know, but this diary felt very personal to me. Also, interesting thing that I liked about it is that she travels quite a bit here. So she often goes on pilgrimages to temples, like Buddhist temples, and she would describe her travels. She would describe houses that she comes across. She would describe like location and nature of the place, kind of like she described Mount Fuji, the episode that I read you in the beginning. So she describes a lot of nature, so you get to see kind of Japanese countryside through her eyes. There is like one kind of love affair, very short, not even love affair, I guess, just a man whom she admired and whom she was interested in, and who was kind of interested in her. So there's this like small kind of love episode in this novel, but very short. A lot of poetry, a lot of poetry. She was writing poems to everybody, and she was receiving poems from everybody. She writes a lot of poetry. Later I remembered that when I read The Makioka Sisters by Junichiro Tanizaki, he also mentioned his characters to write poems to each other, but those were like husband and wife, and they were writing poems kind of about the weather, about cherry blossoms, you know, they were leaving poems to each other. So I didn't really kind of attach it to this being kind of means of communication of all people. I thought maybe that was just like romantic relationship between husband and wife. Turns out no. Turns out not exactly, because look, she's sending poems to everybody. Which is, yeah, just so fascinating. I just love it. So yeah, just hugely enjoyable book. I haven't read all the notes yet, so that's what I want to do now in the evening while I have some time before sleep. I want to read through the notes, because there is a, like, you see, when you read, there is always, let me show you. You see, when you read it on the side of the text, you will always see kind of numbers. Oh, here you can really see how many numbers. These are all the notes. These are all notes on the back. So obviously I wasn't reading all of them, so I want to read through at least some of them now. I read some of them and they were really interesting. For example, there was a note on the translation of one of her poems, and in the introduction he also mentioned that it's almost impossible to translate Japanese poetry. You cannot translate all the beauty of the poem into the English language, because like ancient Japanese and modern English couldn't be more different from each other. That's what he writes. So, and in one of the notes he kind of shows the thought behind her novel, and how it's not only the meaning, but it's also kind of the form of the language and kind of the syllables that she is using, the words that she is using, and other poems that she is referencing in that way. So it's kind of, you know, he explains all the complexity of the poem, and it was really interesting. So yeah, notes, I'm going to go through some of them. The notes that I did read, they were really kind of enlightening and yeah, interesting, fascinating. So yeah, really enjoyed this, not a novel, this diary, this book. I would highly recommend it if you are interested in reading ancient, not ancient, like Middle Ages, right? Middle Ages Japanese diaries, if you like reading diaries at all. Yeah, it's very quiet, nothing much happens. It's just like, you know, what would you expect from a diary? I went there, I did that, I received that news, I sent that letter, you know, that's that kind of narration. But it's, like I said before, it's just a look into a person's life, a person who lived long time ago in a completely different world completely different from ours. And just the fact of that you get to meet a person from a different world and look at the world through her eyes is really interesting and fascinating to me. So yeah, that's why I hugely enjoyed this little short book. Yeah, so I will read the notes, then I will sleep, and tomorrow I will start with the waiting years. And yeah, see you tomorrow. Everybody, good morning. It is a few days later, so it's not exactly the next day after I filmed the first part of this reading vlog. It's actually a few days later. Today is Saturday, the 30th. But I figured, like, what's the difference? So I'm filming a few days later. Today I am going to read The Waiting Years by Fumiko Enji, which I am very excited about. First, because it's like almost lunchtime and we had breakfast very early, so we are going to have brunch with my husband. And then, because today is very hot, I am not going to like walk anywhere. I want to have a walk, but it's just 37. It promises to be 37, the very peak of the day. So I am not going anywhere. I think I will just stay at home all day and I will just read after we have this brunch. So I'm going to take you out for brunch and then I will come home and I will start reading this book, and all the way till the evening I will be reading The Waiting Years. So now let's have brunch and then let's read. At me. This weather is not for pleasant summer walks. It's too hot. I was just walking from the station to my house. It's like a 15-minute walk, or I think, yeah, 15-20-minute walk, and I thought I was going to faint because it was so hot. I don't deal with this amount of heat. I cannot deal with that. I was not born for this. I was born for cold Russian winter. Japan is great. Everything is great in Japan except for Japanese summer. Japanese summer is just, oh. I'm going to endure these 2 months. I feel like August and September are going to be really hot. Maybe September will be a little bit better then, but August is going to be bad, and I'm just like, I'm preparing, I'm mentally preparing for this. I'm like, Tatiana, get ready. Get ready for 37 degrees every day. Oh. I'm going to take a shower because that's the only thing that helps. And air conditioner, of course. Air conditioner God bless the person who created the air conditioner and the fan. Okay, everybody, so I've showered and I'm ready. I'm ready to start with this book. So yeah, I will start reading. I think I will just read all day until evening, because it's too hot and I will not go outside. I've closed my curtains so no sun would enter this room. I have closed my curtains, my aircon is working. I'm going to cool down and just read my book. So let's start reading and I will update you when I have something to update you with.
You know, when this long night will fade away, and we go back to our old ways, two perfect strangers in disguise. When the sun is going to stretch its arms on the road, turn us again with his shrill call. Into perfect strangers in disguise.
Hello everybody, so it's a few hours later and I am on page 68 and off to the second part of this book. I think that this book is going to be very disturbing because of the situation that is portrayed here. So this book starts off with a wife of a government official who is the second biggest and most important figure in the city of Fukushima. And she comes to Tokyo. Officially, the official legend of her visit is to just visit her friend, to go shopping in Tokyo, to go sightseeing, visit some theaters, just kind of traveling. But after arriving to Tokyo, a few days later, she confesses to her friend that actually she came to Tokyo with a purpose and she has a business to do. And what she needs to do is she needs to find a girl for her husband. Officially, the girl will be his maid. Everybody understands that the girl will, of course, be his concubine. And her husband has very particular wishes as to what kind of girl he wants. He wants the girl to be very young. He wants her to be unspoiled. He wants her to be unexperienced, and just very simple. The most important, clean and unspoiled. And so she came for her husband to look for this type of girl. The sad thing is that she loves her husband. She really loves him. She is this type of very emotional and very passionate woman, actually. When she was younger, her husband used to cheat on her, and she would always know that he has cheated on her. She could always recognize what girl he cheated on her with. She's very sensitive. She's very sensitive to her husband and just kind of his behaviors and also to behaviors of other women towards him. So she is actually jealous of him. She loves him. She craves for a close relationship with him, but it's impossible for some reason. And so now she is given this very cruel task by him. He was the one who asked her. He was the one who told her to go to Tokyo and find a young girl for him. And so now she's there. And she sets off looking for a young, beautiful girl. She wants to find a really good, beautiful girl to just satisfy her husband. I think I make her sound as a very simple type of a woman, very submissive type of woman. She really isn't. She is a very intelligent woman. She is you can feel this kind of core in her. She's very strong, she's very intelligent, but she sees herself, she comes from a family of samurai just like her husband, and this kind of, I guess, patriarchal upbringing in both of them kind of sets their values. Her husband considers men being higher than women and more important than women. She herself sees kind of the meaning of her life in supporting her husband, in helping her husband. Not so much her husband family, like the family that she belongs to is her ultimate meaning in life, I guess. And that's why she agrees to what he asks her to do. She does it for the family. And so now she's in Tokyo. She is looking for this perfect, beautiful, simple girl. She is compared to a closed, the girl she is looking for is compared to like a closed bud of a flower. And yeah, it has been 3 months. She has been looking for a good girl for 3 months, and she couldn't find. Some of girls had already been in relationships with men, some of girls are not beautiful enough, some of girls are not, she just doesn't like something else about them. She's just very sensitive. She sees people through, you know, she just sees them. It's not like she's very particular, she just sees people through. And she just sees their personality. And so after 3 months, she finds this young girl. She finds this simple, very beautiful, she's described as a very beautiful girl. She finds her. And the girl's family are owners of a shop, but their business has gone very poor recently because they were unlucky. They had a bad employee who stole from them, and now they are almost bankrupt, and the family has no money to live on. And the only way for them to kind of survive, I guess, is to sell their daughter. Initially, they were thinking of selling her to a geisha house, but everybody understands that the girl would not be successful in the geisha house just because of her personality. She is very beautiful, but her personality is very shy. She doesn't like drawing attention to herself. She's not talkative, she's quiet, and just everybody understands that with this type of personality, she would not be success as a geisha. Another, like, second best way for her to go is to become a maid in a rich house. And so yeah, her family just sell her to Tomo. Tomo is this wife who came to looking for a girl. And now this young girl, she doesn't know what is going to happen. She's 15 years old. Everybody is telling her that she's just going to be a maid in a big house. She's going to take care of the husband of the family, but nobody tells her what type of care she's going to provide to him. And yeah, so now they're going back to Fukushima, to the house. That's where I will stop telling you about the story. That's where I read so far, but I will not be telling you more what's happening. But I feel like it's going to be very disturbing. Just the whole situation, it's already disturbing to me. Like, he is 40. But let's see how it turns out. Let's see. The way she writes, I actually really like. I like that it's descriptive. She describes how our characters look like. She describes how they feel. And I really like it. So, I will continue and I will update you later. Okay, everybody. So it's already 11 p.m. I finished reading The Waiting Years by Fumiko Eiji. This book was not what I expected, to be honest. I don't have like a concise decision about it yet. overall, I really enjoyed it. It was not as disturbing as I expected it to be. I will think about it until tomorrow morning, and I will tell you my final thoughts about it tomorrow. Okay, everybody, so it's already the next day, and let me tell you about The Waiting Years by Fumiko Enti. Like I said in my previous clip, this book was not quite what I expected, because I really expected it to be very disturbing and gross, judging from like the first part that I read and a little bit of the second part of the book. It felt so gross. It felt very gross. I feel like it's not going to be a spoiler if I say that there's going to be relationship between the girl and between the husband of the family, because like it comes literally, you could conclude that if the wife is looking for a concubine, you can conclude logically that there's going to be a relationship between a man and this concubine. So yeah, of course there is this relationship, and it feels so gross. It's even multiplied because the author is constantly describing the girl's feeling towards the man as daughterly feelings. Like she sees almost like a father in him. And it just feels so much like incest. Like every time she mentions how she perceives the man, how she kind of looks at him, because she's 15 and he is 40. And he treats her, well, obviously he wants her to like him, so he treats her very well. She kind of sees a father in him, and it's constantly mentioned. It's mentioned very often how much he is like a father to her, and that's why this relationship between the two of them feels very much like incest, and it just was so gross to me. It was so gross. Every time I read about it, I was just like, I need to take a shower. It's gross, it's disgusting. I'm going to shower. Because like I wanted to clean myself after reading about that. Like it was so gross. But luckily it was like after certain part, after a little bit, their relationship stops being at the center of the attention of the novel, and Tomo, so the wife, comes back into focus. And also, time passes and time goes by, and so Suga, the concubine, grows up and she gets older, so she's not 15 anymore. And then it kind of feels better. She turns like 30 at some point, and like it feels better already. And also just she stops mentioning this relationship. It's just kind of assumed that you know what is going on. So that was great that this relationship stopped being at the center. And then you realize that the book is not actually about the relationship between the man and his concubine. The book is about the relationship between men and women in the society of that time, in like big, like if you look at it like in a big scope. But if you just look at the story itself, the story is about the relationship between the husband and the wife, not the concubine, the wife. And this relationship was fascinating. This relationship was so well written. So well written. I loved it. It was really interesting. The thing with the husband and the wife, you would think, like, it's not what you expect. Like, you will probably, whatever you assume, that, like, he sends his wife to find a concubine for him. He sleeps with other women. You would logically assume that he doesn't love his wife. That's not the case. That is not the case at all. I don't know how much I can tell you, because I don't want to spoil it to you. I think I will just tell you that he, with all of his behavior, with everything that he does, you will be surprised. But he respects his wife, in my opinion. Like, in my take on it, like the way I see their relationship, he respects his wife. He sees the strength in her, which is bigger than his strength. Like, her, I guess, inner core, her inner strength is greater than his. And that scares him. And also, it makes him feel inadequate, you know? And with everything that he does, he is trying to ascertain himself. To himself, not to anybody else. He's not proving anything to anybody, in my personal idea. He's just trying to prove himself to himself, trying to break her. And I just concluded for myself that this book is about two strong characters, two strong people opposing each other. To some extent, she doesn't oppose him that much, but she doesn't allow to break herself. There was actually an episode when you can clearly see how she scares him. I will not be retelling you the episode because I don't want to spoil it to you. But when you read it, it's somewhere like in the first half of the book. When you read it, that's when you understand that he does respect her, he does love her, he does sees all the strength and the intelligence in her, and that just scares him. That just scares him. So that's the thing, in my opinion, with their relationship and why he is doing what he is doing. The ending is brilliant. Interesting. It's your decision as a reader to decide for yourself who won in this opposition between these two characters. Is anybody broken? If anybody broken, maybe no one is. Who won? Who finally won? There is no clear answer. That will be up to you to decide. You will be the final judge, the final judge of this opposition and this fight, and I really liked it. I think this book has a lot to say. Well, obviously it's a feminist book. Obviously it's a book. It's a critique of patriarchy. It's a critique of patriarchal society and how it suppressed women, how it made women victims of men, how many women's lives were ruined because of just whims, just men's whims. Yuki Tomo is not really concerned very much about women. He sees himself as the main figure in the family, and that's why he's so desperately trying to ascertain himself. He's so desperately trying to kind of break his wife, because he should be the strongest person in the family. But what I thought to myself, the interesting thing is that he was always the second man. He was never the first man. When his not master, but just, the guy who was higher than him, when the guy left, he couldn't continue the politics. He couldn't pursue anything else. He needed someone stronger than himself. And so I thought that maybe it's also partly had its effect on him. He understood that he is not as tough as he seems, or not as tough as he's trying to show to other people, because he's always the second man. He needs support and protection, and he can protect himself. in certain situations. He is very brutal, and there are certain episodes where his brutality is very much shown, and even he himself did it. Like it's not like he hired somebody. Well, obviously he did certain things with other people, but he also participated. So like he is quite tough. But I was just wondering, like, I don't really know, but it just seemed to me that probably it might so be that his kind of second position also played certain part in his kind of complexes, and he probably had some complexes, and that's why he was also so uncomfortable with the wife whom he felt to be stronger than him, because he felt in my opinion he had complexes about himself. So that is interesting. So yeah, and this book obviously has a lot to say about relationship between men and women, between husbands and wives, and of course it's a critique of patriarchy. So it's a very feminist book. It is a feminist book, which not always is my cup of tea. Like I don't really have any like take on feminism. I don't have any opinion on the topic. Well, obviously I think that men and women are equal. Obviously I think that like everybody deserves like equal rights and equal payments and stuff like that. But sometimes you just see very kind of simplistic dichotomy that these people make. Something like, oh, men are such oppressors and women are like victims and angels and men are terrible. And I just don't like it. Like I really do not like it, because like not in my experience. And well, obviously like my experience is not, you know, a universal experience, but I don't like this generalization that like, you know, men are terrible oppressors. I just rubs me the wrong way. Rubs me very wrong way. So and this like simplistic dichotomy that you sometimes, I guess, hear and come across, I really don't like it. And that's why I never seek out feminist literature. I never seek out stuff like that. And also I'm just like not very much concerned with that. So, and this being like feminist book, I was happy that it didn't have that simplistic dichotomy. Men in the Shirakawa family, which is the family in the book, they are unlikable, and they are all very self-indulgent, and it comes from their upbringing. It is mentioned also in this book that they both, husband Yukitomo and wife Tomo, they even have similar names. I don't know if it's significant in any way, like Yukitomo, Tomo. I don't know if it like means something, but I found it interesting. Both of them come from samurai families, and it is this like samurai upbringing. Man takes the first place, woman is secondary. And so I guess it all comes from there. And so all the men in the family are very self-indulgent, but they are not completely terrible. Even Yukitomo, even the husband Yukitomo, like you do not hate him. You really do not hate him. He's an intelligent man. He has intelligence and you respect him for that. He has influence and he has strength, and you respect him for that as well. So there are certain things about him that if not redeem him, like they don't redeem him, he still is very self-indulgent. You know, he's not the devil. He's a human who has positive sides to him and he has negative sides to him. He's family oriented. His family reputation means a lot to him. That is also like he takes care of the family. He takes care of his family. So that's something I respect. And also women in this book, they are not all virtuous angels. You know, they are victims. They are victims of the self-indulgent man. But there are characters who are not virtuous at all, who are also selfish. Women who are very selfish, and they also just want to live their life and just want to enjoy their life and get the most out of their life, and they do it with, you know, they don't do the right thing, but they just try to live their life, you know, and enjoy it in the way they understand how to enjoy a life. So, you know, this dichotomy, this simplistic dichotomy is not really here. And I really appreciated it, that characters are so complex and it's not all just, you know, black and white, oppressors and victims, you know. There is more. There is more to the relationship between people here. And even the submissive, the shy, the quiet Suga, the concubine, even she sometimes has like very selfish thoughts, but it is also understandable in her position. So, yeah, I like this book. I really like it. My favorite part about this book is the portrayal of the relationship between the husband and the wife. So good. So good, so interesting, like really interesting. You cannot generalize it. Like, it's wrong to generalize anything about people, in my opinion. Like, men are all different, women are all different, all couples are different, all relationship in the couples are different. So you cannot say that, like, you know, all men are like that and all women are like that and all couples are like that, and that's, you know, generalizations are wrong. They're always wrong. But I guess there are certain parts in this book which many people would relate to, would at least find interesting and fascinating. So yeah, I enjoyed this book. I can recommend it. And so yeah, so that's it for this vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. I gotta get back on track with like my videos. I really want to, but it's so hot these days, and like I don't like sitting at home. When I sit at home, I'm very unproductive, terribly unproductive. Like, cannot do anything. So I'm waiting for the heat to subside and become less, and then hopefully I will be able to go out and feel more. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want, I would recommend this book, as well as I Crossed the Bridge of Dreams. That was great as well. And yeah, I hope you're having a very good day. I hope you're reading good books and enjoying them. And I will see you soon. I don't know when, but I will see you soon in my next videos. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.